YouTube kicks censorship into overdrive. 17 states have now joined Texas's case against the battleground states. Aliens are here and waiting for us. And Chinese spies have infiltrated the Democrat Party. Okay, so maybe that last one isn't really news. But all this and more today on Revved Up with Ram Thorburn.
Every time who I am, well, I came, I'm a man, 6 shooters in both my hands. I'm a cold-blooded brother, a real bad mother. Watch out, honey, here I am.
Welcome back to Revved Up with Ram Thorburn. I know I haven't posted a video since my live stream on Saturday. I've been a little under the weather and also just very busy with my day job, so it's been tough to get a video out. So we have a lot to talk about today, though, starting out with YouTube. And they are going to be removing videos disputing the 2020 presidential election. This is pretty troublesome. It's very troublesome. So let's go ahead and see what it's, you know, YouTube's determined to curb election misinformation is extending to disputes over the results. The Google-owned service has started removing content uploaded from December 9th onwards if it alleges widespread fraud or errors altered the outcome of the 2020 U.S. presidential election. You know, it's becoming increasingly obvious. We all know what happened. And for YouTube, I am not saying that widespread fraud or errors altered the outcome of the presidential election. I'm not saying that, YouTube. But when it comes to the election and everything that did happen, we know what happened. They know what happened. We know they know what happened. Yet they are... Yet it's like it's one big game where everybody knows and they have the power, so we're just supposed to sit down and shut the fuck up. That's the game. Have they ever done this with any other presidential election? They're a multinational company. They haven't done it with any elections in any other countries. Why is this one so special? You know, they say that we're past the safe harbor day, so everything is settled. Well, first of all, we are not. I mean, we are past that safe harbor day, but that safe harbor day is nothing but a date. Because we also have a case going on. Everything is still in dispute. Things are challenged. It is not settled science. Oh, not really science, but you know what I'm saying. They like to use the term settled science when it comes to, you know, climate change and all of that, and because they really just want to take the debate out of everything. But it's sort of a similar strategy that they're pulling now. They don't want us talking. And I got a feeling they're actually looking a little bit further down the line. I don't think it's so much about us not talking about what happened. I think they're worried about us talking about what comes next. Because if they try to stop they're trying to head us off at the pass. Looks like they're trying to head us off the pass, so if we stop talking about the election altogether, which is what this is going to try to do, then we won't talk about, well, okay, so what do we do if it proceeds as it's being projected currently? Because that can get pretty hairy. Although I will admit, I have seen with a lot of the people on our side, they seem to be starting to, quote, come to terms with the results. I have not. I know there are a lot of other people who have not. But it seems like even the voices on our side are starting to say that it's a done deal. But we all know that it's not, because we have this big case with Texas. So we know Texas has filed a lawsuit against, or for this in the Supreme Court against Michigan, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and we now have 17 states have joined them. And this could be extremely big. And so we have here, election integrity is central to our republic, and and this is from Eric Schmidt. Election integrity is central to our republic, and I will defend it at every turn. As I have in other cases, I will help lead the effort in support of Texas's SCOTUS filing today. Missouri is in the fight. And so Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, is the one who filed this. And Texas is coming in to save the day. Now, Well, hold on. Let's just go ahead and read a little bit more of this. So, it's not just Missouri. On Wednesday, Alan West told Steve Bannon on the War Room, I think you're going to see 10 states sign on to this petition and lawsuit. I know you said Louisiana just came on board. 7 states have already reportedly joined Texas in their lawsuit against Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And the list has now grown to 17 states. Missouri, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, MS. That's not Massachusetts. No, that's MA. What's it? Mississippi, Montana, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, and West Virginia have all signed onto this. I'm actually kind of surprised that Wyoming and Idaho haven't signed onto this. You would think that they would have, and potentially Iowa. But they are challenging the constitutionality of this. And the idea behind this is that these 4 states, they unilaterally, they bypass the Constitution in unilaterally adopting the mail-in voting without going through the state legislatures, which was against the Constitution. And they have a very good case there. And I've been hearing from everybody that they're not really going to be getting into the other issues that we're no longer allowed to talk about on YouTube. But there is some evidence showing that they actually might. So we have this here. A statistician in the Texas lawsuit against Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin says the probability of Biden winning the election was 1 in quadrillion. So if this is included in the lawsuit, that doesn't have to do with the constitutionality of it. That has to do with some of the things that happened, clearly. So I'm wondering. I don't know exactly what's in the lawsuit. I haven't had a chance to read it. I think that they had it in here. I think it was like 92 pages or something. It was more than I've had time to read. So maybe somebody else can correct me or inform me better. I am not entirely sure. I'm playing a little bit of catch up here because, like I said, I've been extremely busy with work. But the so USC and former Harvard statistician determines that the possibility of Joe Biden winning the states of Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin were basically statistically impossible. So if this is being part of the case, then they're throwing in I think they're going to be throwing in a lot of the other things that had merit. And I also saw that, the Supreme Court, they denied the Pennsylvania case, which was the case being brought forth by Mike Kelly and Sean Parnell. And they turned that down because essentially everything in there was going to be in this case as well. So we reported on the case this morning coming out of Texas, challenging the 2020 presidential election actions of 4 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. In the filing, a statistician notes that the probability of Joe Biden winning these 4 states was basically impossible, as reported at the Election Wizard. A new lawsuit filed today, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to block 4 battleground states, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, from casting unlawful and constitutionally tainted votes in the Electoral College. In the brief submitted to the Supreme Court, Texas includes a declaration from Pacific Economics Group member and USC economics professor Charles J. Secetti, I think. Dr. Secetti is the former deputy director at the Energy and Environmental Policy Center at Harvard University's John Kennedy School of Government and received his PhD in economics from Rutgers University. According to Dr. Secetti, his calculations show the probability of Joe Biden winning the popular vote in the 4 states independently, given President Trump's early lead in those states, as of 3 a.m. on November 4th, 2020, is less than 1 in quadrillion. Dr. Sechetti's analysis calculates that for Joe Biden to win all 4 states collectively, the odds of that happening decrease to less than 1 in quadrillion to the 4th power. That's an unfathomable number. Quadrillion. A quadrillion is basically an unfathomable number. 1 in quadrillion to the fourth power, they said that's like 60 zeros after the 1. It'd be impossible. It would be absolutely impossible. So you got to think that there's a good chance that SCOTUS is going to hear this, and they are going to rule that a lot of those that all the mail-in ballots in those states are unconstitutional, which would then, if they throw those out, nobody reaches 270, and then we end up with the state legislatures appointing, it'll come down to state delegations where each one state, one vote. And that Republicans win, Donald Trump wins. So long as, honestly, man, I've got that sinking feeling that, even if it turns out that way and, just because there's more Republican legislatures, as we've been seeing in my home state of Georgia with Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger, some of these Republicans may not, they might even go for Joe Biden. Who knows? Who knows? It's absolutely, absolutely ridiculous. So the censorship, and of course, YouTube is censoring all of this. Social media, we've seen the rise in other companies. We got Parler, we got Rumble, which if you not follow me on Rumble and BitChute yet, you probably should, because who knows if I am long for YouTube. One day you just might scratch your head and say, whatever happened to Ram Thorburn? I haven't seen any of his videos in a long time. Well, might want to start making your way over to Rumble and BitChute, not only just for me, but because this is where a lot of the content is going to be going as the censorship ramps up and big tech continues to exert their monopolistic power. And we're trying to show that they, their monopolistic power may not be quite as strong as they think it is. And in that vein, Facebook, or the FTC, and 40 states, I think 48 states and territories, have sued Facebook, and it could force it to divest Instagram and WhatsApp. So we have here the Federal Trade Commission and a coalition of attorneys general from 48 states and territories filed 2 separate antitrust lawsuits against Facebook on Wednesday. The suits target 2 of Facebook's major acquisitions, Instagram and WhatsApp. Both lawsuits are seeking remedies for the alleged anti-competitive conduct that would result in requiring Facebook to divest the 2 apps. Now, what's funny here is Facebook responded. The most important fact in this case, which the commission does not mention in its 53-page complaint, is that it cleared these acquisitions years ago. Facebook chief counsel Jennifer Newstad said in a statement, "The government now wants a do-over, sending a chilling warning to American business that no sale is ever final." Well, I think that precedent was already set by Barack Obama's Department of Justice when ES&S Voting Systems acquired Premier Voting Systems, and the DOJ cleared it, let it go, and then 8 months later came back and forced ES&S to divest Premier Voting and its technologies to another company of their choosing, a company named Dominion. So this precedent has already been set, so Jennifer Newstad can shut the fuck up because it won't be setting any kind of new precedent. But I do think that, these tech companies have to be reined in. They're absolutely out of control. But, what's interesting about this, and for the longest time, conservatives have been, they've always said, I'm not really for antitrust laws and things like that. I've actually never been mad about antitrust laws. I think there is a good reason for antitrust laws, and I always have. That was the one thing that the right... all right, I'm going to get into a little bit more again about the right and the left and that whole dynamic. But the right, as in the parlance of our times, has always been against antitrust laws, and that's one thing that I've always diverged from, because to me, the right is not... It's always been like we're pro-business or pro-government. That's been the dividing line. And one thing that we're learning in the era of Trump is that a lot of the bifurcations that were made amongst us politically don't stand up to scrutiny, or either that or the situations have changed. And I think it's actually more so that they've revealed more of what's going on with a lot of these companies and government. And it's really kind of changed the dynamic, and I don't really agree with the whole left-right dynamic anymore, because we're kind of learning that there are certain things that the left has been saying that the right for a long time, under the guise of, the old school think tank conservatives, the ones that are now the never Trumpers, and the neocons and the think tank conservatives kind of set up what we call Conservative Inc. And there's a lot of things that they got wrong or did not have the foresight to see. And I think, this falls under one of those categories. And the whole idea was, back in those days, was the right was pro-business, the left was pro-government. And we're seeing that that doesn't play out anymore. And maybe it never did. Maybe it never did. And just the messaging, the way that we understood things was two sides of the same coin. Oh, I like heads, I like tails. But it's all one coin. Trying to figure out the best way to put all this. Because the reason we've been against government is because we are afraid of government being unrestrained, and then it can use its power over us. But government is not the only apparatus that can do that. Companies can do that too. If they lord over a market and it decreases competition, which is one thing that conservatives have been completely for, is marketplace competition, because marketplace competition reduces prices, brings down the cost of everything, and it also drives forward innovation. So for the longest time, the right has been all for marketplace competition, but then they've never had the balls to break up the companies that actually destroy marketplace competition. So that's one of the things that I saw a long, long time ago, and one of the reasons I've never actually had a problem with antitrust laws. But we're seeing even more of that dynamic, that dynamic where some things that the left always said that the right rejected, the right should have been listening to a little bit more. And what we're finding is that sometimes the left sees problems that we didn't, and we rejected them primarily not because the problem didn't exist or because they weren't seeing an accurate problem, but because their prescription to that problem is bad. So I was on Facebook earlier today, and I saw this guy that I know post this, and this is from Dan Price, Seattle. This is a tweet. Just to recap, the Fed pumped an extra $3.2 trillion into the stock market. As a result, stocks soared to a record high. So execs essentially got a stock-based bonus paid by the government. But giving money to regular people would have been too socialist. And the person who posted this, they're extremely far left. I mean, they're basically a Marxist. And I had to comment on there. I was like, I don't. What I say? I said. Let's see. I forget exactly what I said. I basically said that Trump supporters are kind of with you on this. Trump supporters are with you. We don't actually disagree that government should not be bailing out these big businesses and giving them all these kinds of taxes, or putting all that money into the stock market so that they get rich and then not giving any money to the people. We're not really about that. Now, of course, that's kind of awakened under the era of Donald Trump, where we become more populist on the right. And that's where I think some of the overlaps come. But that was Donald Trump pulling the veil over some of the fallacies that the think tank conservatives and the neocons fooled us with for years. Really, they tricked us on a lot of stuff like that. And it's just really interesting to see how that dynamic is shifting, which is why I no longer really subscribe to the ideas of there being a left and a right. For one, if they do go from the center, then it's more of a teardrop or horseshoe theory, because the further you go to each extreme, the more similar they become. The more similar they become to each other. So they don't actually go further apart. They come back and they meet. But it really is interesting to see how that dynamic has changed. And to me, my new sliding scale, and maybe you guys can put some improvements on it, but it's 1776 to 1917, constitutionalism to Marxism, and put me on the full 1776 side of that argument. Put me on that side of the equation. But it's also, I was talking to my sister recently, and I think I even mentioned this on another video. I was talking to my sister recently, and I was talking to her about how. I was talking to her about the new dynamic of economic fascism and the whole fashcom concept that I've come up with, where they're implementing economic fascism where you can make billions upon billions of dollars as a corporation so long as you toe the national party line. And my sister, she said to me, she was like, "You sound like a raging leftist right now." I'm like, I don't actually. I don't. Because, we've never been for business and government being in bed together. That's never been a conservative position. And it's one of those things that the left maybe saw it because because the relationship was going one way before, where it was the corporations giving kickbacks to the government and then the government giving them favorable favorable legislation and government contracts and things like that, and we looked at that as more run-of-the-mill corruption. But now that it's kind of going the other way, where the corporations are getting the kickbacks and they're doing the government the favors, and that's coming by way of things like censorship and potentially, vaccine, forcing us to have vaccines. You can't fly on a plane unless you have proof that you've gotten the vaccine, things like that. So it's really interesting, though, to see how the left and the right, that whole dynamic is really just blowing up in front of our eyes. It's not making any sense anymore. Now, what differs from, even though we maybe are seeing some of the same problems, is our prescriptions to it. So a lot of times you see from the left, when they rail against big businesses, when they talk about the millionaires and the billionaires, the Bernie Sanders rhetoric, most of their motivation in railing against the millionaires and the billionaires comes from envy. It comes from envy. It comes from, they have this while these people don't. And we don't really subscribe to that so much. Ours is more so, what are they doing with their money? And what they're doing with their money is getting in bed with the government and teaming up with them to oppress us. So it's a little bit different. It's different reasons why people on the right, some of the Trump people were looking at the billionaires and saying, well, these people are the fucking enemy. Well, it's not because they're billionaires. It's not inherently because they have wealth. If you're a billionaire, I mean, fuck, Donald Trump. He's a billionaire. He comes into office and he fights for the people. Good for him. I'm never going to begrudge somebody for the money that they have. I will begrudge somebody if they get that money by selling out the American people, especially to foreign interests. That is the primary difference between the constitutionalist crowd and the Marxist crowd. We might be seeing some of the same problems, but the direction we're going with those problems are entirely opposite. Now, I'm just gonna switch directions, complete 90-degree angle, because we've got a whole lot of stuff to cover today. But New York Post: aliens in hiding until mankind is ready, says ex-Israeli spacehead. I mean, could 2020 get any weirder? Now, we've been speculating about this for a while now, and I kind of think, it sounds loony, but after a lot of things that we've seen with, like, the Tic Tac, those Tic Tac spaceships, and 6 months ago, sometime in December, will mark 6 months ago, that the Senate actually required a declassification of what we know about alien technologies and alien presence here. So again, the Navy acknowledging those Tic Tacs were not theirs, were unidentified flying objects. There have been a lot of things that have been kind of warming us up, kind of priming the pump for some sort of disclosure about whether there's alien life here on Earth and whether we've been in contact with them, anything like that. So, to me, there's a time not too long ago when I would have thought this was absolutely insane and far-fetched. At this point, though, I don't know, because, and including a recent interview between Stephen Colbert and Barack Obama, where Stephen Colbert asked him about it, and Obama was just like, I can't tell you, and Colbert took it as a tacit acknowledgement, and Obama just kind of said, well, think what you want. And then also, remember a few months ago, Don Jr. was interviewing his dad, and he said, I just want to know about the aliens. I just want to know about that. And Trump, he gave a very similar response. He was like, a lot of interesting stuff at Roswell, a lot of interesting stuff. So they've sort of, it's almost been a soft admission to this point. A soft admission that there are aliens here and that we are in contact with them. So at this point, I'm not looking at this as kooky lunacy anymore. Especially, this is coming from an ex-Israeli space head, so the head of their space department. Which, maybe he's 87 years old, and maybe he just wants to get a laugh out of sending everybody into a stir about this. I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. Anything's possible, and I don't have the answers. All I can do is speculate. But the truth may be out there, but nowhere near as out there as this tale. Space aliens have reached an agreement with the U.S. government to stay mum on the experiments they conduct on Earth, as well as their secret base on Mars, until mankind is ready to accept them, the former head of Israel's space program claimed in an interview. Well, I'm starting to think that this might be the goddamn perfect time. This might be the perfect time to start disclosing all of this. And maybe that's why 6 months ago they set up sort of in the Senate, they alluded to, let's disclose things. And that should, the 6 month mark should be sometime here in December. I forget the exact date, but it was in July or June that that they ordered this, and I think they ordered it from NASA or whoever. I'm not sure who they ordered it from. I forget. The article was a long time ago. I did a report on it back then, I believe. But this would definitely be the time, because just take the temperature of the damn planet, especially America. Take the temperature of America. We are getting very close to civil war, and we could also be very close to war with China, which would ultimately result in a true global war. A true global war. So we could be on the verge of this planet just being in absolute tatters if something is not done to stop the day-to-day politics and give us something that we can unite over. And I think a whole other, aliens being on Earth would kind of be that thing. We might stop fighting amongst each other if we realize, holy shit, we maybe can make it to outer space. We can interact with extraterrestrials. There could be something that might bring us together finally and stop the squabbles. But until that happens, all we have is what we have here on Earth, and that's what we're going to fight over. So I think it's really, really interesting, but I do think that, if this is all real, it's time to disclose. And it could prevent a true global war. I mean, we've had World War I and World War II. Those were really just European war plus Japan. European war, then European War II plus Japan. What we're looking at now between the United States and China, which of course, Beijing Biden's going to come in there and he's going to continue selling us out to China. So it likely won't happen if he actually gets in there in terms of World War. But that means civil war might happen here. In fact, civil war might happen here either way, which I think we need, like I said, we need a big distraction from all of the current politics that are going on, and alien disclosure could be an extremely effective way to do that. So it's so funny, our politics are so fucking heated right now that when it came out that the Navy was set, or yeah, it was Navy or Air Force. It was Navy or Air Force. One of them was coming out and saying that, yeah, these were UFOs. It hardly made headlines. Imagine that 20 years ago. It would be all we'd be talking about still to this day. So, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe aliens could come down here and say, hey, we're here to help, and we'll just say, go the fuck back to your planet. We're ready. We got to kill each other here. That might be the case, but I got a feeling that if there's anything that's going to bring us back together, it could be space aliens. So, but they continue. Excuse me. The aliens have asked not to announce that they are here because humanity is not ready yet. Again, I think we are ready. Trump was on the verge of revealing alien existence, but aliens in the Galactic Federation are saying, wait, let people calm down first. I'm actually thinking that the aliens arriving might be what calms us down. That might actually be what calms us down. Eshed, who helmed Israel's space security program from 1981 to 2010, reportedly said. So he helmed their space security program for 30 years. Again, dude might be losing his marble. He's 87. He is old, but I don't know. I'm leaning towards this is probably more fact than fiction. Maybe not all of it's entirely factual. He says they don't want to start mass hysteria. They want to make They want to make us sane and understanding. We're not headed in that direction, aliens. We're not headed in that direction whatsoever amongst ourselves. So until that day, aliens have secured an agreement to keep their moves under wraps, said Eshed, noting that the extraterrestrials come in peace. They have been wanting for humanity to evolve and reach a stage where we will generally understand what space and spaceships are, said Eshed, according to the Jewish press. There's an agreement between U.S. government and the aliens. They signed a contract with us to do experiments here. They, too, are researching and trying to understand the whole fabric of the universe, and they want us as helpers. One of the hubs of the cooperation is a base on Mars, where, by the way, Eshed claims American astronauts have already set foot. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. You know, I mean, I guess if the aliens have already been here and they have been coordinating with us, maybe they gave us the technology to make that possible. Who knows? Who knows? But he says there's an underground base in the depths of Mars where the representatives are, and also are American astronauts, Eshed reportedly said. So it sounds entirely bizarre, but I mean, God, it's 2020, guys. I mean, what the fuck else? Nothing. I think we're getting to the point. Maybe that's what this entire thing has been about. This entire 2020 fiasco has been about making it so that nothing can surprise us anymore. That way, when the aliens come, I won't even be surprised. I'll just be like, fuck it, finally. You know, there you are, guys. Welcome. You know? I mean, at this point, who knows whatsoever? I'm sure they're going to be a lot more friendly than Representative Cynthia Johnson, which, if you haven't seen this clip yet, this is Cynthia Johnson. I showed a video of her during the Michigan hearings the other day, when she straight up called the people that were testifying liars. And she put this out right here. And hold on, let me make sure that my volume isn't, I don't want resonating in my microphone.
So this is just a warning to you Trumpers. Be careful. Walk lightly. We ain't playing with you. Enough of the shenanigans. Enough is enough. And for those of you who are soldiers, you know how to do it. Do it right. Be in order. Make them pay.
Make them pay. Those of you who are soldiers, you know what to do. Well, I hate to tell you this, bitch, but most of the soldiers aren't on your side. But look at, you know, there's something about her body language. Like the way she moves her eyes, the way she moves her mouth. It's so mechanical. It's so mechanical, and it's so hyperbolized. This woman is a lunatic. Absolute lunatic. And apparently she came out and she hasn't really addressed this, but I haven't heard this directly from her, but I've heard somebody say that she said that it was she was talking about soldiers of God or something like that. Yeah, right. Said to the party of atheism. The Democrats. The commie-crats. I don't think so. But this woman has now been stripped of all of her committees, thank God, and I do think that she should probably be kicked off and I think she's actually being investigated right now, so I think she's fucked. This is an absolute clear threat that it's, you know, she made it vague enough where, of course, Twitter won't suspend her for it, even though they should. I don't think there's any, I don't think this threat is veiled whatsoever. She said, those of you who are soldiers, you know what to do, and do it well, do it right. We know what soldiers do? Soldiers don't go around giving people hugs. They don't go around, soldiers kill people. I don't think that was really a veiled threat whatsoever. But God, this woman just seems straight up evil. Evil. I'm going to play this again. Pay attention to just the energy, like the hate oozing out of her. Play it one more time.
So this is just a warning to you Trumpers. Be careful. Walk lightly. We ain't playing with you. Enough of the shenanigans. Enough is enough. And for those of you who are soldiers, you know how to do it. Do it right. Be in order. Make them pay. So
I mean, just there's something about the way that she is, like the way she contorts her face and the way she enunciates her words. There's just a absolute disgustingness to it. It's slimy. It's slimy. But speaking of slimy, we've got a new story coming out about the Chinese communists, not the Chinese people, but the Chinese Communist Party. And this video has been making the rounds of Dongsheng. And this is, there's two parts to this video, but this is really important. And I'm going to, there's a lot of subtitles, so I'm going to try to read the subtitles with it. I mean, he's speaking in Chinese. He's speaking that Ching Chong Chang, so the speed of it is very different. But I'm gonna go ahead and try to read the subtitles as we go here. So the Trump administration is in a trade war with us. So why can't we fix the Trump administration? Why between 1992 and 2016 did China and the U.S. used to be able to settle all kinds of issues, no matter what kind of crisis we encountered, be it the Yihe incident or the bombing of the embassy, or the crashing of the plane? Things were absolved in no time, like a couple do with their quarrels, starting at the bed head but ending at the bed end. We fixed everything in 2 months. What is the reason? I'm going to throw out something that may be a little explosive here. It's just because we have people at the top. At the top of America's core inner circle of power and influence. We have our old friends. As we don't have much time, I won't go into details. I'll only tell a little story. Now, he goes on to tell a story. I'm not going to play this whole thing. I'm going to skip forward to another part a little bit later. But he tells a story about how they wanted to do he was supposed to do like a speech or something at a bookstore. And the owner of the bookstore basically told him to fuck off. Next thing he knows, he tells his leaders, and they tell him, no, we're going to do it at that bookstore. And I think I don't know if this was here in America. I think it was here in America. And apparently he goes back to the bookstore. His leaders are already there, and there's another woman, and the owner of the bookstore, who was a guy who didn't want the Chinese communists in there giving him giving a speech in his bookstore that he owned, was standing in the corner with his arms crossed, and this woman was some Wall Street banker. And he tells this story. He talks about the Godfather and the horse head in the bed. Basically, he made it very clear that this man was threatened into forcing them to allow them to give a speech in that bookstore. And he was very, very proud of it all. Very, very proud of it all. And you know what? Yeah, it's long. It's a long story, but it went to show just how slimy the Chinese communists are. They're slippery, they're greasy, and they're proud of that. They're proud of that. They think that is a good way to function. Because, of course, it goes back to the Lenin quote that there are no morals in politics, only expedience. They have no virtue whatsoever, the Chinese communists. And so they are proud of their slippery sliminess. They're proud to be goddamn earthworms. And so he continues. I'll go to the 6-minute mark here. He says, okay, so in fact, that is to say, to put it bluntly, for the past 30, 40 years, we have been utilizing the core power of the United States. As I said before, since the 1970s, Wall Street had very strong influence on the domestic and foreign affairs of the United States, so we had a channel to rely on. But the problem is, after 2008, the status of Wall Street has declined, and more importantly, after 2016, Wall Street can't fix Trump. Why? It's very awkward. Trump had a previous soft default issue with Wall Street. So there was conflict between them. but I won't go into details. I may not have enough time. So during the U.S.-China trade war, they, Wall Street, tried to help. And I know that. My friends on the U.S. side told me that they tried to help. But they couldn't do much. But now we're seeing Biden was elected. And everybody laughs. The traditional elite, the political elite, the establishment, they're very close to Wall Street, so you see that, right? Trump has been saying that Biden's son has some sort of global foundation. Have you noticed that? Who helped him build those foundations? Got it? There are a lot of deals in all these. So, yeah, he's basically admitting that that they own the Bidens. Yet, here, Biden is set to enter the White House. What do you think that means for America? It means the TPP is going to be back online. They're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and then they're going to raise taxes. So what's going to happen then? All of a sudden, companies, they have to pay employees more, and they also have to pay more for every other operational cost due to taxes. And then they're going to say, well, you have the TPP, you can outsource those jobs to China and then ship it back here free of charge. What do you think the businesses are going to do? This is one of the ways that you destroy the middle class and the working class in America. In fact, it's already been done. It was already done during the Barack Obama administration, and even well before that. I think it amplified during the Barack Obama administration because they were the ones that were looking to put the TPP into place. And this is another thing, going back to my conversation about the left and the right before. Back, during Occupy Wall Street, they were against all of these trade deals. Those were things that the right didn't see. The right was all about free trade. We didn't seem to understand. We had blinders on where we didn't see how that sold out American interests. We do now. And that's why, again, I think the left and the right dynamic doesn't necessarily work, because the left was seeing some certain things that we were not. Now, their prescriptions to it were always the wrong, they were taking it the wrong direction. In fact, they tended to always take it in a way that would exacerbate the problems that they thought they were trying to solve. But credit where credit's due. They saw a long time ago that the TPP and NAFTA and all these free trade organizations were bad for us. While we had our, Jonah Goldbergs and Bill Kristols and all of these limp dick cucks here on, the never Trump cuckservatives here in America that were pushing for all of these things that sold us out to China. Which goes to show that the whole idea of the left and the right, the conservative and that, it seems to all be manufactured with bits and pieces from each one getting certain things right and everything wrong. Meanwhile, while we're fighting over that, nothing ever gets solved, and the establishment goes out and does whatever the fuck they want to do. And then they're able, certain sides of the establishment are able to gain favor with each side of the electorate because we've been misled on what exactly those positions mean for us as Americans. Very, very insidious. But, he was talking about Hunter Biden there. He's talking about how do you think we got those? I mean, you don't need, that's as much of an admission as we need to know that, yeah, they did that. They gave Hunter Biden a $5 million interest-free forgivable loan. Interest-free forgivable loan is another word for gift. They gave him a $5 million gift. And Tony Bobulinski, who blew the whistle on this, he said that he warned them not to take it. Don't take this. You don't want to take this. You don't want to take that money. And they went behind Tony Bobulinski's back, and Bobulinski straight up said the Bidens are compromised. And we have a compromised president-elect who is going in there because, well, I can't say it on YouTube, but I think you know what I'm about to, what I would be saying, about to go into the White House to continue doing exactly what the Chi-Coms want him to do. But Hunter Biden, at least, is now under federal investigation for possible tax fraud. And he should be under investigation for a hell of a lot more than tax fraud, because that laptop from hell showed some Epstein-like behavior that really needs to be investigated too. That stuff, I get it. It's good to take people down. We got Al Capone on taxes too. We couldn't get him on all the other stuff. Maybe you take what you can get, but I think that other problem is big enough and pervasive enough among these elite crowds that we shouldn't be given passes, because we need to find out more into that. And apparently our Department of Justice doesn't want to do that. So President-elect Joe Biden's son revealed Wednesday that he's under federal investigation for possible tax fraud. Oh wait, Hunter actually revealed this himself? Actually, I'm just realizing I haven't read the story yet. When I was doing my prep, I put it on. I must have skipped over this one and highlighting what I was going to read. Whoops, I blundered there. But let me. I guess I'm reading this news with you guys. So, President-elect Joe Biden's son revealed Wednesday that he's under federal investigation for possible tax fraud, with a report saying the Justice Department is examining his overseas business dealings. Of course, they only have I'm granting them the premise of a Biden presidency. I'm not sold on it. I do think that this lawsuit from Texas could undo it. Could undo all of that. So the probe also reportedly involves a laptop that belonged to Hunter Biden, the existence of which was first reported by the Post, and which contains communications and documents detailing some of his business dealings in China and Ukraine. I think that they need to very, very quickly set up a special counsel for this, because we all know what's going to happen if Beijing Biden comes into office. Like, he's really going to let the DOJ continue to investigate his own son. And, of course, he'll have the lapdog media there to cover up the fact that he canceled the investigation. So Hunter Biden, 50, disclosed the probe in a statement released by his father's presidential transition office. I learned yesterday for the first time that the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware advised my legal counsel also yesterday that they are investigating my tax affairs, Hunter Biden said in a statement. I take this matter very seriously, but I am confident that a professional and objective review of these matters will demonstrate that I handled my affairs legally and appropriately, including with the benefits of professional tax advisors. Bull motherfucking shit. The entire fact that he's getting all this money from China while his dad, it's absolutely disgusting. So a statement attributed to the Biden-Harris transition said, President-elect Biden is deeply proud of his son, who has fought through difficult challenges, including the vicious personal attacks of recent months, only to emerge stronger. Those vicious personal attacks were based on things that he had done, his actions, which were disgusting. There's nothing to be proud of Hunter Biden for. I'm not even going to read any more of this, because that's absolute bullshit. But speaking of China, China's all over the news right now. They've suspected Chinese spy reportedly slept with courted U.S. officials to gain intel. And so she was a Chinese Matahari who allegedly slept with at least 2 Midwestern mayors while cozying up to a slew of Poles across the country in a bid to infiltrate the U.S. political system. Among the Poles who Fang got close to was California Democratic Rep. Eric Swalwell, and she also once helped raise funds for Tulsi Gabbard. The idea was for Fang to maneuver herself into key government circles and sometimes politicians' beds to gain personal information about them while ingratiating herself with unwitting potential up-and-coming heavy hitters, intelligence sources told Axios. U.S. officials know of at least 2 mayors who had romantic relationships with Fang, likely now in her late 30s or early 40s, for about 3 years, the site said. And, of course, the big one that we've been talking about is Farticus himself, Eric Swalwell. So, allegedly working at the direction of China's ultra-secret Ministry of State Security spy agency, Fang likely didn't get her hands on any classified U.S. material, but she may have helped place unwitting sub-agents in local and congressional offices, U.S. officials said. Fang helped place at least 1 intern in Swalwell's office, according to 2 sources. So, at least 1 intern in Swalwell's office is, who knows whether they got ferreted out. I don't know. She also raised funds for Swalwell's 2014 re-election campaign and interacted with the congressman at a number of events over several years. But federal investigators who began investigating Fang based on what they considered her suspicious behavior informed Swalwell about their concerns involving her in 2015. Fang's case showed that the Chinese Communist Party has the patience to cultivate relationships, and that may take years. Before they reap rewards. Yeah, they're patient. They're patient. They're in it for the long game. That makes them very, very dangerous. And Swalwell, that he's on the Intel Committee. Swalwell is on the Intel Committee. He should not be on the Intel Committee anymore, and likely he should be removed from Congress. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he didn't know. But still, you let him in. You let the wolf in the hen house. You let the fox in the hen house. You're held accountable for it. I think Trump should. I think Swalwell needs to go. And let's see. So Schiff now, of course, Adam Schiff. He's refusing to disclose why he withheld details of Swalwell's relationship with a Chinese spy from the intel community. So Schiff knew about this, withheld it, because Schiff is as dirty as any of them. Hell, these California Democrats, California Commie-crats, that's what they are. California Commie-crats are the absolute, and you know, China, California seems to be ground zero for China's invasion, infiltration of the United States, especially in the Bay Area in San Francisco, where Dianne Feinstein had a communist spy in her employ for 20 years, which means she needs to go too. Plus she's like 85 years old. Why is she still in office? Dianne Feinstein has to go too. And she's spoken so glowingly about China and how she made, when she was mayor of San Francisco, she made them a sister city to Shanghai. We say Shanghai here in America, bitch. Just absolute glowing about building up China. And it's been absolutely ridiculous how the establishment narrative has been that a rising China is good for the world. Fuck no, it's not. Fuck no, it's not. That's like saying not a rising Nazi Germany was good for the world. Because the Chinese are fucking evil. They are they're completely unscrupulous. It's probably the best word to describe them is unscrupulous or inscrupulous. What's the right one? Leave a comment in the section. Maybe I think it's unscrupulous. Unscrupulous, I think. Anyways, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff did not respond to the Federalist questions about the Intelligence Committee member and California Rep. Eric Swalwell's position on the committee in light of recent news revealing Swalwell's connection with a suspected Chinese spy. Schiff's office also did not respond when asked if he previously knew about Swalwell's involvement with Fang or if he was briefed about Swalwell's relationship with Fang. So he wouldn't even respond to whether he previously knew about Swalwell's involvement. I think that's a tacit confirmation. When Barack Obama came into office, he said that they were going to be the most transparent administration in the history of America. They were the most opaque administration in the history of America. They did everything behind closed doors. They weaponized agencies to go after their political opposition. We've seen that with, where do I start? The IRS, for one, with Lois Lerner. They weaponized the FBI and the DOJ. Obviously, Michael Flynn's case just got dismissed by Emmett Sullivan. Finally, Judge Emmett Sullivan. That's another story. Good news though. But the fact that and you also just see with this election, they're fighting tooth and nail to prevent anybody from looking into it. Why would you do that if you didn't have anything to hide? The Commie-crats have been absolutely against transparency. It's because they're trying to steal America. They're stealing the country. So Swalwell also refused to answer the Federalist questions about the extent of his relationship with Fang, ignoring allegations from sources directly familiar with the counterintelligence investigations of Fang, who told the Federalist that she and Swalwell may have had a sexual relationship. I pity her. He is a fucking pathetic, sad little man. I mean, talking about an effeminate dude. That guy just... He just oozes, like, virtue signaling and all that stuff that is absolute weakness and unmasculine. So, according to two sources, federal officials were so concerned about the romantic relationship between U.S. congressmen and a suspected Chinese spy that they even investigated whether Swalwell may have tipped Fang off about the counterintelligence investigation after he was given a defensive briefing on the matter shortly before Fang disappeared from the U.S. in 2015. A senior U.S. intelligence official told the Federalist that investigators only uncovered limited circumstantial evidence that Swalwell may have tipped Fang off after he was warned of her connections to Chinese intelligence. That means they still uncovered some evidence that Swalwell may have tipped her off. That would put him directly in collusion with a Chinese spy, our chief rival. Russia's not our chief rival. It is China. In fact, the entire Russia thing was to keep our eyes off of China and Ukraine. Which I think, at this point, I think Ukraine is almost a proxy state of China. From some of the stuff that I've read and some of the stuff that I've heard, that most of the oligarchs and the people in charge in Ukraine are really puppets for the Chinese communists. Because and like I was saying in that video, that part that I skipped over, you know, he was talking about how he just solves all of his problems with money. He just pays him a bunch of money, and he was so fucking proud of how slimy he was. These Chi-Coms are fucking disgusting human beings. Are they even that? Are they even human beings? I'm starting to think that communists are not people. Fuck, I hope those aren't the aliens that have been among us, because damn, that would not be good. That would not be good one bit. But just to show just how bad these Chi-Coms are, Chinese tech giants tested facial recognition software to alert authorities to Uyghurs. Let that sink in. Chinese tech giant is testing facial recognition so that authorities can be alerted just at the existence of a Uyghur. The Chi-Coms are making the Nazis look like child's play. They're making them look like amateur hour at Auschwitz. So, Chinese tech giant Huawei reportedly tested a facial recognition software that could send automated Uyghur alarms to government authorities if a camera identified a Uyghur in the crowd. The company began working with facial recognition startup Revved in 2018 to test the artificial intelligence software that could scan faces in a crowd and give estimates regarding their ethnicity, age, and sex, according to a document exclusively obtained by the Washington Post. However, if the software detected a Uyghur, it could trigger an alarm that would then be sent to local authorities, according to the report. Man, this is... I mean... Hitler's in his grave saying, "Why didn't we have this technology?" I mean, just the fact that so much of our establishment, especially the commie-crats, are all for working with China, doing all this stuff, and selling us out to China, selling us out to these people. You know, we hear the term Nazi collaborator. There's one day they're going to look like nothing compared to the Chi-Com collaborators. But you know what it took to get rid of the Nazi collaborators. Both Huawei and Revved reportedly both acknowledged that the document which was previously posted to Huawei's website but has since been removed, is real. Huawei spokesman Glenn Schloss said the system is simply a test, and it has not seen real-world application. What do you think it's being tested for, you motherfucker? Real-world applications, motherfucker. Huawei only supplies general-purpose products for this kind of testing. We do not provide custom algorithms or applications, according to the report. Like that fucking matters. You know what they're doing with it. You're complicit in it. Who is this Glenn Schloss guy? That's not a that's not a Chinese name. Some of these people, I really hope that there is something going on under the surface that is going to out all of the Western world that is working with Chi-Coms, and that they get their own Nuremberg trials. And not the bullshit Nuremberg trials that the Nuremberg trials were, but the real Nuremberg trial. Or there were no real Nuremberg. You get what I'm saying, though. A real version of it. One where they get more than just a few people who were the worst collaborators. I don't even know if no, they didn't even get the worst collaborators at the Nuremberg trials. They got some, fucking fall guys, I believe. I don't know, I have to brush up on my history on that before I can say that with any kind of real confidence, but this is what the Chinese are doing. Implementing facial recognitions so that they can put an ethnic group into a concentration camp. Of course, they call it an education camp. Just as creepy. Just as creepy. We need a full fucking embargo of China. A Cuba-style embargo. Whatever dependency we have on China, fix that shit now. But watch, Joe Biden's going to come into office, and he's going to sign on to the TPP. I got a feeling that, Donald Trump, when he came into office, put his hand on the Bible, swore an oath to the Constitution to defend our country from enemies both foreign and domestic. Joe Biden is clearly compromised by the most evil regime in at least modern history. I mean, the Mongolians did a lot of raping and pillaging and killing themselves. I mean, you could say they were pretty evil too. It's sort of an entirely different breed of evil. That was just back in the day when it was kill and conquer. But yeah, this stuff is Joe. Trump. I guess what I'm trying to say is Trump's oath of office should preclude him from allowing Joe Biden into the Oval Office, into the White House. Because Joe Biden, we know he's sold out to the Chinese. It's a fact. Absolute fact. Not a fucking opinion. Now, last couple things I wanted to cover are just little side stories that I just thought were noteworthy. We have this story from this op-ed from USA Today, and this is just to show how absolutely insane the commie-crats and the Marxists, the Marxist side of the spectrum really are. COVID has turned breathing into a deadly event, and all of us into potential serial killers. If I hold my breath when I hug my parents, will that spare me the Greek tragedy of killing them? This mental toll will last long after the threat fades. Are you fucking kidding me? Has turned breathing into a deadly event and us into potential serial killers? This is absolute lunacy. COVID-19, it's like a 99.9% survival rate, and for people over 75, I think it's still like 99% or 95%. It's absolutely nuts, though. Absolutely nuts. So it goes on. As coronavirus burns an exponential path of destruction across the American terrain, an insidious blanket of shadow damage is quietly unfurling in its name. It's not just the death and scarred lungs. COVID-19 has turned every man, woman, and child into a potential serial killer. You should always be weary when people write like this. When they write this, like, this is fear porn. This is absolute fear porn right here. So he says, so far I've been fortunate. But not a day goes by that I don't wonder whether my streak of good luck is about to end because of the person in front of me at the grocery line. Because the person in front of me in the grocery line is wearing a mask below their nose, expelling a cloud of radioactive COVID dust that I cannot escape, short of dropping $50 on the conveyor belt and trying to outrun the security guard. Well, somebody needs a straitjacket. And in fact, I think there are millions upon millions of Americans who need a straitjacket instead of a mask over this fucking commie cough bullshit. They continue. With alcoholism, opioid addiction, or smoking, we stand a fighting chance. But COVID-19, so now he's minimizing the opioid addiction crisis. But COVID-19 has turned the most necessary part of living, breathing, into a deadly event. If there's anything that can make us hate our neighbors, it's the possibility of their very existence. Every breath they exhale could be lethal. This is designed to stir you into a panic. They want you scared. This was written by a man. Or a man. No man reacts to hardships this way. No man reacts to adversity this way. This absolute hyperbolic fear-mongering. Too many castrated men in this country. Too many goddamn castrated men. You must be pumping, too many people on that soy diet. And we also have another one here. This is Joe from Scranton didn't win back the working class. And of course he didn't. So for years now, Democrats have preached the gospel of changing demographics. As the country grew more diverse, they argued, the electorate would inevitably tilt in their favor and give their party an unbeatable edge. Well, the country is more racially diverse than ever before, but exit polls suggest that Joe Biden lost ground among Latino, Black, and Asian American voters in 2020 compared to Hillary Clinton's performance in 2016. Demographics, it turns out, are not political destiny, but diplomas just might be. And they go on to talk about how it's basically colleges. Colleges. It's people who graduate from colleges, who go through these indoctrination programs that our universities and colleges have become. They're socialist, Marxist indoctrination programs, and so people come out of it thinking that that stuff is real, and then they vote for the commie-crats. But of course, it's mostly the upper crust white people that have these politics, and then they come out speaking all this fucking lunacy. So I see they actually said Latino, not Latinx or Latinx or however the fuck you pronounce that. That culturally appropriated thing done by white liberals where they degendered the Spanish language for them without their consent. Yet you're not going to gain those people. And it's funny because they come out and they start talking about, ranting about racism and discrimination and this and that, and then all of this other crazy shit that's involved with the Marxism, and it turns off the very people that they say they're trying to help, and then they're not going to vote. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it. It's so fucking hilariously confusing. They think that they're getting in league with the minorities, but instead, because they're these elitists, they're actually separating themselves from the people that they think they're drawing in. No, most of those people look at them, most Latinos, you call them a Latinx, and they'll be like, bitch, what the fuck you call me? No, they're not on board with this shit. But it goes to show just how much of an indoctrination center our colleges and universities have become. And it's true. And maybe that's why they're trying to funnel everybody into these colleges. Maybe that's why they're trying to, forgive student debt, have free college, all of that. Because if you have that free college, then all of these people will then be run through that same indoctrination machine, and then they'll come out agreeing with it. Maybe the inhibiting prices of colleges through all of these administration officials that they've hired. That's one of the big reasons. Well, there's a lot of reasons why college has gotten extremely expensive these days. But part of it is because of all the bloated administration, and a lot of that bloated administration comes in their their diversity programs and the inclusivity and all of that bullshit. And now it's becoming prohibitively expensive for lower end minorities to afford. Maybe that's a blessing in disguise for the minorities, because they're not going to go and be brainwashed by these goddamn communists. I don't know. It's 2020, guys. The world is entirely fucked up. Now, I'm going to close it on one last one, because it also kind of has to do with the Marxists. And this is from Nerl, which is, the abortion people. Them and I forget what NARAL stands for exactly, but NARAL and Planned Parenthood are like the two big pro-abortion things. They say, today, the U.S. House Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health, and Human Services, Education, and Related Agency held a hearing on the harms of the racist and discriminatory Hyde Amendment and related abortion coverage bans. Of course, there's no mention of race in the Hyde Amendment, but they call it racist anyways because, if you're a communist, all you do is you call it racist, and then all of a sudden that you have legitimacy in your argument in their minds. So they say, this is what's so funny though, they say, discriminatory bans on abortion coverage like the Hyde Amendment are designed to push needed care out of reach, particularly for marginalized people who are already burdened by multiple structural barriers that block access to abortion. We must end this harmful policy in order to realize a future where reproductive freedom is a reality for everybody, regardless of who they are or how much money they make. Pregnant people, I think the word is women, I think that's the word you're looking for, pregnant women with low incomes and women of color. Why didn't you say people of color that time? See, these people don't even believe their own bullshit. And women of color must have access to reproductive health care that centers their dignity and decision-making. What? When they are trying to avoid unintended pregnancy into pregnancy or give birth to healthy children. It's funny how, especially, this is true on the left, the Marxist side of the spectrum in general. But it's especially true with the abortion crowd. And that they always have to use euphemisms to hide exactly what they're talking about. So they say, where was it? Puts needed care. Killing a baby isn't care. That's not health care. In fact, you're killing somebody. That's the opposite of health care. It just trying. Kind of at a loss for words today. Maybe I'm a little rusty because I haven't done a video in a couple days. But what's interesting is that the care that they're talking about, they're saying that it's racist because it discriminates against minorities from killing minorities. They're saying it's racist to stop killing minorities. The unracist thing would be to kill more minorities, to kill more black babies, to kill more Hispanic babies. That's the non-racist thing to do. That's literally what they're saying. They just use these euphemisms so that, because if they said it outright, then we'd all be horrified. But anybody can look at this and see that that's exactly what they're saying. That they're saying that it's racist that we prevent black people from killing black babies. Now, of course, there's nothing in the amendment that actually has anything to do with race. They just look at it and say, it's one of those, like, you got to go from lily pad to lily pad to get to the end conclusion of what they're saying. You got to skip a couple stepping stones down the line. That basically because minority communities tend to have less money, they aren't able to afford to get an abortion, and therefore that means that the amendment is racist. Never the fuck mind that there's nothing in the language that has anything to do with race. It's just coincidental. It's just circumstantial. Entirely circumstantial, but and to be racist, you have to actually have intent. But that's logic, and we don't go to the Marxists for logic. We all know that. But it's absolutely disgusting that they're going to sit here and call things racist as they're sitting here trying to kill black babies, and Hispanic, whatever babies, non-white babies. They're fighting to have more non-white babies killed. That's what's going on here. And we're the racists. Yeah. I'm going to leave you guys with that. Because this is entirely fucked up. Again, I'm going to say, in case I'm not long for YouTube, make sure you follow me on Rumble and BitChute as well. Also on Parler. I'm using Parler more than anything else now, but I am also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And, if you would like to contribute to the channel, there are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. But anyways, guys, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share these videos if you like them, because it's really the only way to get the word out, especially with all of the censorship that's going on and everything like that. So, with that, rev your engines, ride hard, and fight like hell.